What was the scariest one?
Oh, I don't think I've ever had a scary one.
Interesting.
One of the things that you learn is that you're there to observe and not partake. If you start partaking, you can get hurt. I learned very quickly, no matter what it is, because the military targets that we got, some of them were horrendous. Nightmare situations. And I learned very quickly, observe, don't get involved, And so even if there was a really bad target, I would observe it, report it in session, and that's it. Which is another of my thing of whap, 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 just do the job, move on,
Yeah, don't ask questions. Just report what you see and don't overthink it.
That's right, yeah.
So going all the way back to your abduction experience, we didn't really talk about emotions. Like when you kind of woke up and saw this, it sounds like, again, I'm introducing an analytical overlay into this, but it sounds like a tall white. It sounds like
that's how I would describe it. Yeah. Uh-huh.
How was your reaction? Like, were you scared? Like, what is going on?
For some reason, I wasn't. I think I was more confused. I didn't know where I was. I realized that I was, in rows of seats with people acting just frozen. And I kind of deduced I was on a plane. I don't know exactly where that came from. And this tall, extremely pale guy came walking through. And I almost won't fly on a plane if I can't get in the window seat. And so I immediately said, "Excuse me, can I sit by the window?" And that's when he panicked and ran out.
Did you see anything out the window?
I never got to sit by the window.
Okay. All right. Any other sessions of note, remote viewing sessions that involve this open search outward that you found particularly interesting?
A few. And as a civilian, after the military, we've done quite a bit of space research for space research organizations. And I don't know, most of that is non-disclosure agreements, but I can talk general theory about it. But no, I found it all to be interesting every time.
Any sense of like a broader kind of interstellar organization, political arrangements?
Yeah, I never got that. I know people talk about the Galactic Federal Council.
Yeah, I've actually, on the CIA's website, there's actually a remote viewing session of someone who reports on something like that. I don't know what to make of it, right? Because unless it's correlated with 7 other things, there's no way to vet it. But
yeah, that's the thing. There's no feedback. I never found any of that. I was never tasked with any of that. One thing I realized is that any intelligent being like that in the remote viewing, they're just more people to me. That's all they are. I go to describe them. Yeah, I'll describe them as, looking like an insect, looking like a praying mantis or something like that. But it's just more people to me. To my subconscious mind, it's just more people.
Yeah, just different form.
Different forms, yeah.
Now, did you ever get a sense, either through remote viewing or just through other means, that there's a technology transfer program between us and ETs?
Yeah. Through other means, I know one of the people who's in charge of one branch of the technology transfer. And I would meet him at times and he'd say, "Lyn, you got to see my new toys."
Do you have a sense for how that works? I would imagine to circumvent FOIA requests, you would place somebody like that in a private company that is subcontracted by the government.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. It worked for he's retired now, but he worked for a civilian organization. Yeah.
And what was your sense for, to the extent you discuss it, how that transfer program came about, what sorts of things are being transferred, and why it's not more publicly disclosed?
The last time I saw him, I said, "So what's new?" And he was showing me some of the stuff. And I said, "Well, what are we trading back?" And he kind of chuckled and he said, "This is an old culture we're dealing with, and they've stopped being creative. And they're trading us stuff that to them is very ordinary. And we're taking it and doing all this creative stuff with it and making new inventions." And he said, "These days, what we're trading them is their own stuff back, improved." And he said they're glad to get it. Yeah.
And then do you have a sense for how long this has been going on?
I really don't. He'd obviously been in it for a long time. Yeah.
How does one get in on this racket? It sounds like you can do pretty well with it.
I meet people, and I have always had this thing of hooking people up together with each other. And so I find somebody who has one interest, find another person who is interested in that. And pretty soon they start hooking me up with different people. And, it's social networking. And so I have friends in high places and I have friends in low places.
Yeah, so if you need something,
country song, I got friends in low places. Yeah.
Yeah, you need to kneecap somebody. You know who goes it, right? Yeah, I can imagine. Are there any questions about this specific topic that I haven't asked you, but I should have asked you?
Not that I can think of or that I would want asked. It's been a tremendous experience for me. It has been a wild ride. Like I say, this is the most interesting job I ever had in my life. I never expected it.
So funny you mentioned that. So when I was in the military, I was assessed as a military intelligence officer, but they put me as part of the branch detail program.
It's the military, yeah.
Yeah. So I had a degree in electrical engineering from Stanford, and they assessed me in military intelligence, and then they said, "You're going to be on a tank for 4 years."
Yeah.
Right. And that's, it's a highly perishable skill if you're not using it constantly. Yeah. But if I had known that remote viewing may have been an option, it was probably, the program was officially canceled long before I started, not long before, but probably, was it canceled in 95?
Oh, yeah.
So it was canceled 3 years before.
Stargate was.
Stargate. Yeah, right. So, well, actually, that's another follow-up question, but I'll get back to that.
Okay.
But they canceled that particular program 3 years before I started my military service. But if I had known that were an option, I would have stayed in. Instead of just doing 5 years and then out. But I had no idea that was an option. Now they canceled that program, you said. In your opinion, does the program still exist in the government?
When you retire, they quit telling you secrets. Okay. And so I have to say, I don't know. That's honest. I don't know. I do know that several years ago, long after the unit had been disbanded, there was a thing on the CIA employment list that they advertised for remote viewers. And then it was immediately taken off. It was only there for about 30 minutes to an hour, and went away. So I don't know. I can speculate. The other standard answer I have is that we were good. We saved lives. We saved the government just mega bucks of money. We did a good service, and it would be really stupid for the government to have disbanded it and not have it anymore. But then that changes the question. Does the government ever do anything stupid?
All the time.
So it's back to the point where I have to say, I really don't know.
Have you ever been approached by the government for contracts like that?
Not for contracts.
Okay, I'll leave that on it. I'll leave that. I won't follow up on that because unless somebody has a low IQ, they can figure that one out.
Yeah, like I say, I do police work, any government work, and all that pro bono. No contracts.
Got it. Okay. Well, thank you again. This was fascinating. I mean, just the level of detail that you were able to provide on that story was.
I tend to shy away from the UFO question because it's so linked with the woo-woo, and I don't really want the remote viewing to be linked with the woo-woo. And so I generally stay away from it. But the fact is, if you can collect information about anything in time and space, UFOs are fair game. Yeah.
Yeah, and look, it's a lot for folks to process, which is why they should watch the episode before this one, because that provides the grounding that this is a real thing. It is grounded. We didn't talk about this, but I've talked about this with David Morehouse extensively. But it is grounded in quantum physics. There is a scientific grounding for it. I'm not sure how much more scientific work they've done on it, but there's still a lot that we don't understand about the nature of reality, and having an open mind is something that I think is critical. We don't know all the answers to everything. I mean, knowing what happens after death, right? Like, scientists don't know. They have no idea. And that's something that they should know. And the only way that you're going to get answers for this is if you're open to some of the data that's out. And it is data. Like, you look at near-death experiences. I'm sure there's a ton. I'm sure there's a ton of hoaxsters, et cetera. But you can't keep hearing the same story over time from credible people like doctors, PhDs, former military folks, and not think there's something to it. Now, is it something your mind's making up? It's possible. I'm not saying I don't think it's probable, but it's possible. But I think it's also possible that energy is neither created nor destroyed, right? Which is, it's a basic scientific principle. So if that's
and be coherent, yeah.
And if that's the truth, then what's the nature of consciousness, and how is consciousness? How much of it is physical? How much is it non-physical? Is everything we know locked in our brain, or is it coming from the outside? Where do we get our ideas? Are we in? So anyway, that's a lot of things to unpack, but I think it's important for people to understand that. And I want to make sure that everyone should do their own homework and gain an understanding what's happened. But the successes of remote viewing are impossible to ignore. And if I were the CIA and I took over the program, I would say it's all hogwash, because the last thing I would want is every suburban mom having the ability to go to, attend a meeting at Langley from in a remote viewing session.
Yeah.
So anyway, thank you very much, and I really appreciate your time.
Oh, thank you.
If you enjoyed this video, please hit the like, subscribe, and notification buttons. Additionally, if you have any feedback, please put something in the comments below. And lastly, if you want to watch the full episode of this clip, you can find it above. Thanks again for watching.